All right, thank you.
Hello, this is Andrew. Hello, this is Andrew.
Hello, this is Lydia Tennant.
Hello, good afternoon,
This
Lydia.
is
How you
Alicia
doing?
Wyatt.
Alicia Wyatt, is that what I heard?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good afternoon to both of you. We'll be starting at approximately 12:30. I'm trying to take roll if everybody's on there. Once I get closer to 12:30, I'll start the meeting and hand it over to Dr. Louder.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
What did did somebody get bingo?
Yes.
Here's the tape.
I think someone has their phone needs to be put on mute. We can hear you. There you go. Hello, this is Andrew Loftus.
Hi, Andrew. This is Ana Peña.
Hello, Anna. How are you doing?
Good, good. And yourself?
I am doing all right.
Andrew, do you head out today for graduation or tomorrow?
Excuse me?
Don't you have graduation tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 10. Yes, sir.
Tomorrow.
I'll be.
So you're leaving out today?
Well, it's right here in San Marcos, so I'm not really going anywhere. It's right down the street.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm off tomorrow. Gonna go see him walk the stage. All right. I believe it's 12:30 right now, so I just want to take a roll call, just to make sure we have quorum before we begin the meeting. We should be live on the webcast as far as YouTube is concerned, and I sent out an email earlier letting you know that you can access a link to see you'll be able to see the text of the language for definitions that we're going to be considering. So let me go through roll call. Justin Lauder, I already have you on. George Ashmore, you're on, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Josh Book, are you on? I think you might be a little late. Dina Coots, are you on the line? Vicki Freeman is on the line, correct?
That's correct. I'm here.
I got you. Francisco, I don't believe will be on. Just wanted to check those. Francisco on? No. Mark Garcia, are you on the phone call? No. Rolando Garza? Michelle Giles?
Yes, I'm on the call.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Glad you can make it.
Thank you.
Steve Levy?
I am here.
Steve, good afternoon. Glad you could be on the phone call.
Good afternoon.
Sharita Love? Jacqueline Mock, I know you were here already, just making sure.
Yes, I'm here.
Good, thank you. Carlos Morales, I don't believe will make it. Carlos, are you there? Just making sure. Pam, I have you on, correct?
Yes.
Linda Murphy, I have you on, correct?
That's correct.
Anna Pena, I have you on, correct?
That's correct.
Patrick Plisht, are you on the line?
I'm here, thanks.
Good afternoon, Patrick.
Hi, Andrew.
Elizabeth Rodriguez, I have you on, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Alrighty. Mary Smith, are you on the line? William Stowe, are you able to join us today?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
William, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Lydia Tenna, I had you on, correct?
I'm on.
Alicia Wyatt, you are on, correct?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Jose Aguilar, just making sure. Are you there? All right, going back up top. Josh Book, are you in?
I'm here.
Josh, good afternoon. Glad to hear. Dina Coots? Ken Craver? Francisco Garcia? Mark Garcia?
I'm here.
You're here. Good afternoon, Mark. Rolando Garza?
I'm here.
Rolando, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And Sharita Love? Mary Smith? Before we get started and I hand over to Dr. Lauder, just make sure that if you are going to make a comment that you say who you are before you make your comment. Give your announcement, announce your name. If you're not speaking, please put your phone on mute because we can hear you in the background. And I believe that's all the preliminary notifications for this meeting. Dr. Lauder, it is in your hands.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. This is Justin Louder, and I will call this special of the Learning Technologies Committee to order. Thank you all for being here and being able to call in. Andrew, we are at quorum.
Yes, we are at quorum.
Excellent. So today, our agenda is as follows. We have some suggested language from the Distance Education Definition Subcommittee that has been finalized, has been vetted, and now as a committee we need to review and vote on it so that it can move forward to be included in some documentation and move forward to be implemented. So with that, I would like to ask Josh, as the chair of the Distance Ed Subcommittee, if he would please read the updated language, because it has changed just a little bit, for consideration.
Thank you, sir. So the language as circulated through the subcommittee and as amended is as follows. Academic programs should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description of fully online programs and courses for students, including the amount of face-to-face and online interactions, number or percentage of synchronous and asynchronous meetings, and number or percentage of proctored exams that students should expect in the program or course.
Excellent. So, as a committee, that is the language that is coming to us. I would like to entertain a motion to approve this language, and then we will open it up for discussion.
I'll move to bring it to discussion.
And who is that?
Steve Levy.
Steve Levy.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve, and now we have open for discussion.
Well, do we need a second first?
Sorry.
Andrew, this is Jacqueline. I'll second.
Jacqueline Mock, second.
Okay, now we have discussion. Sorry, thanks, Andrew.
This is Patrick Push, University of North Texas. Is it our intent for this to apply only to those courses that are 85 to 100% online, our definition of fully online, or do we want it to apply to anything that is considered online, including hybrid blended online?
Josh, do you have an answer for that? Do a response?
I believe that the proposed language is to address the ambiguity between 85% and fully.
And this is Steve again. My understanding was that, and throughout this process, that it was for the 85% and above. But that wasn't specified anywhere. But that was my understanding, and that really seems to me to be where it would be most applicable.
Right. I'm sorry. This is Josh again. I agree with that, and I think that that's been the understanding as we've worked on the language throughout.
Okay, thank you.
So this is Jacqueline. So Patrick, was your question really about, within this definition, to clarify fully online? And would you resolve that by saying, provide an accurate description of fully online programs, comma, as defined by the coordinating board, comma, and courses, or that may be in the wrong place, including the amount of face-to-face time? So are you trying to resolve the ambiguity of what's defined as a fully online program or course?
Yes, because fully online is different than 100% online.
Correct.
And so I think it would be helpful to include the definition of when we say fully online, what exactly do we mean, and a reference to our Texas Administrative Code and definition of fully online would be helpful in accomplishing that.
Okay.
So
if I'm not mistaken, I think somebody just dialed in. I don't know if we
yes, I can check.
That was.
Did someone just dial into the phone bridge?
I did, Dr. Lawson. It's Mary Smith at SFA.
Mary Smith, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you all. Sorry I'm late. I was waiting on YouTube.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Can you see it?
I cannot. There's a big blue screen that says it will begin soon.
Oh, okay.
And Andrew, mine cut out. Like it was playing, and then after like 5.5 minutes, the transmission ended, and it went to whatever was the next recommended thing for me to watch, which was irrelevant to our discussion. So you might want to check and make sure that it is still being streamed.
Yes, I will.
Hi, this is William Stoddard Kilgore. Mine came up with a little small I information in the right corner that was made it available to view. Then it said live stream.
Okay, I think Christina can hear us downstairs right now, so I'm sure they're working on it as we speak. Oh, she's calling right now. Hold on just a second. And she says that the live stream is running. Maybe I'm not sure if you need to maybe log out and log back into the YouTube, or if there's any other issue, you might want to try Chrome.
I actually was on Chrome. I went to Firefox, and then I saw the link that you all are talking about for the live stream, so now I can see it. It was in the upper right-hand corner, and I think I was looking maybe in the wrong corner when I was on Chrome, so I'm good seeing the stream now.
Okay.
So Andrew, we are still streaming, so we're okay to continue?
Yes, we're okay to continue, yes.
Okay.
Would
Back-
you put the definition back up? All I can see is Andrew right now.
Yes. Christina, can you put the definition back up, please? Please let me know if you see it, because I can't speak to Christina at the time.
Okay.
So, Justin,
So
it's Jacqueline.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, just because the length of the proposed sentence is pretty extensive, to the point that Patrick raised, would we entertain a friendly amendment to the motion to have a second sentence that would read, the definition of fully online programs follows the Texas Administrative Code and the definitions as set by the coordinating board?
Can you say that one more time? The definition of fully online
programs is either is consistent or follows the Texas Administrative Code as defined by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Or, Patrick, did you want to spell it out completely as into between 85% and 99%?
I think it'd be nice to spell it out. I mean, that helps remove any ambiguity, and since principles of good practice will appear somewhere other than where the definitions are in code, it does mean that if we update the code and definitions, that we'd have to update language in this particular section of principles of good practice. But it doesn't seem like that is something that's likely to come up soon. Though I would err towards including that bit of it of the definitions actually in this.
You might have to excuse me. I'm looking right now. If you do see it on the screen, I'm looking for the rule, and inside the rules, because I happened to see it yesterday, the definition of fully online is in Chapter 4, Subchapter P. Fully distance education course is how they define it. A course which may have mandatory face-to-face sessions totaling no more than 15% of the instructional time. Examples of face-to-face sessions include orientations, laboratory, exam review, or in-person test.
So this is Vicki. The question is, so could the programs not come back and say, okay, the percentage of time that we're going to give the students is 15% based on that definition? I mean, how exact do we want them to actually be?
I'm sorry, Vicki, I couldn't quite understand you a little bit. Can you say that one more time?
Well, given that definition that it's 85% is considered fully online, wouldn't it be that the programs would just come back and put in that they're going to tell their students approximately 15% of the program is going to be face-to-face, synchronous or proctored exams? Use that percentage? I mean, I don't know how easy it's going to be for programs to say exact percentages.
This is Elizabeth Rodriguez, Laredo College. I just wanted to quickly jump in. I think the premise, and correct me if I'm wrong, behind adding this particular statement was so that institutions would notify students so that they don't register for a program or a course without knowing that there is some face-to-face requirements. And so I believe that was the premise, just to that they make a reasonable effort to notify the student that there will be some percentage, whether it be 10, 15, or whatever, of face-to-face interaction, just so that the student is aware before they register.
So this is Vicki again. So the problem is we're not telling the students the definition of what we mean by fully online. Is that correct?
Right. I think that's what you said, is that we're not really trying to tell them what the definition is, but just to inform them that there is a difference between fully online and 100%, and they know the difference.
Right. So I guess this just seems to be having to be so exact when we're talking about this, and that's a question I just have when I'm thinking about programs trying to give this to students, not saying that they shouldn't tell the students that there is some face-to-face and proctored exams and all, but does it need to be so exact that we tell them what percentage of face-to-face, what percentage is going to be proctored exams, et cetera? I'm just questioning how easy that percentage is going to be for the programs to come up with, and what our reasoning is for this.
This is Josh Book, and I'm sorry, who was just speaking? I have a comment that I want to reply to.
Okay. This was Vicki at UTMB.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. The reason, I understand and agree with what you're saying, and the reason that we added the sort of introductory clause at the beginning, academic programs should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description. The reason that that was added is exactly what you're articulating, that it is difficult for programs and instructors in those programs to provide a very detailed and specific description that for each course and program, because it, as we discussed in the subcommittee meeting, it may vary between instructor to instructor. I mean, particular instructors may decide to have a proctored exam. Other instructors may decide not to, and they're so. That's I guess, to circle back to your comment, the reason that we were trying to address the problem of that programs sometimes cannot. It's like a hurdle too high for programs to be able to define for students specifically in advance with precision the amount of face-to-face and online interactions and the percentages. Because of that difficulty and that challenge, that's why we added the sort of the introductory language of academic programs should make a reasonable effort. So, I'll mute my phone. But anyway, that's why we added the introductory clause, if that makes sense.
This is Alicia Wyatt. I have another question, which is, this language does not exist all by itself. It is presented in the context of the PGP. So it seems to me that the definitions of online, hybrid, and all those things are very likely to have already been in a previous section of the document. So therefore, it's not so important that we define all of that in this one sentence, because it is not a standalone thing. Now, if I'm wrong, I understand that, but that's just how it seems to me at this moment.
This is Patrick. I don't believe they are listed in the Principles of Good Practice document, and it's titled Principles of Good Practice for Academic Degree and Certificate Programs and Credit Courses Offered Electronically. And so offered electronically is kind of the scope of what apply to. And by coordinating board definitions, that would include hybrid as well as fully online, because electronically delivered means more than 50% electronically delivered or online.
Aha, that's an important thing to know. Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion? This is Andrew. Is it possible that maybe, since we're going to the different percentages, which also include, we wanted to distinguish between fully online and 100%, but hybrid also has its own set of percentages. Would it be possible to say academic programs should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description of hybrid blended, fully online, and 100% online programs and courses for students? So therefore, it just tells them that the rules already have the percentages defined. So this is just telling them that they need to be able to explain to students what each one means prior to them enrolling. That way we cover all three modes, fully online, hybrid blended, and 100, and then just make sure that the institution knows that it's up to them, it's their responsibility to inform the student of what the actual requirements are, especially on face-to-face, press proctoring, and so forth, like you have in the rest of the statement. Does that sound like something that's amenable?
This is Vicki again at UTMB, and I actually agree with that, because that's where I was trying to figure out what the reason was for trying to even put this definition together, and I guess more I thought about, maybe it was a confusion between what's fully online and what's 100% online, but it does seem like to me it would apply to any of the ones that are have some electronic component, to sort of reasonably give the students a heads up about what is going to be involved.
I would also agree with Dr. Lofters by adding that. Sorry, this was Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Well, I can put that in there.
And Dr. Lofters, this is Mary Smith, and I agree with it as well. And I think Patrick referenced my situation where I am an online student, and if there are going to be synchronous requirements, that's very nice to know ahead of time, rather than when I get into a course or a program thinking one thing and then finding out after the fact, after registration, after all of that, once I can see a syllabus, oh, by the way, you're going to have face-to-face components.
Andrew, in the event it may be helpful, I'd like to share something that we put into policy at UNT as a result of preparing for our SAC-COC reaffirmation, and specific to this topic. It doesn't address programs, but it does address it at the course level, and it's part of student privacy, student verification type policy that we've rolled all into one thing and put it through our policy process. So I will read that. It's not terribly long, but it's kind of, I think, what maybe the intent is of putting this language in PGP, what a university would actually then do to fulfill whatever it is that we put in PGP. So it's the subsection is titled Required Notifications to Students Enrolled in Distance Education Courses. which would be more than 50% electronically delivered. So it would include all of the categories: hybrid, blended online, fully online, and 100% online. So here's the text underneath that relative to face-to-face meetings. UNT will notify students of any mandatory face-to-face or synchronous, that is, web conference meetings, including those for examinations or orientation sessions for all distance education courses. UNT will publish these meeting times and, where applicable, locations in the schedule of classes by the time courses are made available for registration to ensure students are notified of these requirements prior to enrollment. And that's it. That's it. And it's not a make a best effort. It is a, this is in policy as the university will do this, will notify the students. And it could be softer, but that's just the way that we went with it. It doesn't, again, address programs, because really programs, you're kind of, those should accurately be reflected too if they're on-campus requirements, but really it's the courses where the rubber hits the road and where it's really important as you pick options to make it through that program that you know at that point also that, oh gosh, there's something mandatory, there's a time there, I have to be available every week, etc. So I just offer that as food for thought, and you know, what can we do with this language in PGP that might result in institutions adopting language that works for them at a course level in particular.
Well, I'm not sure if you can see your screen on YouTube, but I do have the added language inside the passage, the revised language in the passage, where I added hybrid, blended, fully online, and 100% programs. If that's what you wanted, it's up there.
This is Josh Book. I have no objection to adding that. In the subcommittee meeting, originally we had included hybrid before online, and the subcommittee members we kind of had gone back and forth and had taken out hybrid, but I can't recall why. Are there other subcommittee members on this call who recall why we had taken hybrid out initially?
Josh, this is Mary. Are you talking about this last meeting the first one that I was able to attend?
Yes.
I don't remember specifically, but thinking logically, if hybrid seems to come with its own perception that it's going to be a mixture of the two, that there will be some face-to-face component. I agree with you. I still think it might be worth including, a reasonable effort to let students know how much, even though we know it's 50 to 85%. What can I reasonably expect? But thinking about the problem being when students think that they're signing up for a fully online program or 100% online, and they don't always, we're having trouble with the language, so you can imagine what someone who doesn't know the language or hasn't had these conversations, what trouble they might have. So putting it on the institutions, I guess what I'm saying, having the institutions give, their best reasonable effort to explain that to students ahead of time.
And for me, and I know the question came up, how exact does an institution have to be? We know how many contact hours a class should have. I would not see this as having to be an exact science as long as students are made aware. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that, okay, you will be logged in for, 6 finals, each final, or 6 exams, each exam should take you an hour, so 6 hours. But I think making the statement, you have to be logged in for a proctored final, or you have to do X, maybe not specific hours, but at least knowing what is required helps with the students' time management. We try to publish the exact dates if we can, but that's kind of where I'm thinking. But I'm open for I want this is a good discussion. But I would like to. Sorry. Oh, sorry, George. One second. Because part of this will impact the PGP, and that's a completely different committee. I think one thing would be is to talk with the PGP group. I know that Francisco is not on the call, and he's serving as chair, but Andrew, I believe Michelle is on the call, and so because of her involvement, can we recognize her as a guest so that she can speak as part of the PGP?
Absolutely. Dr. Singh, are you on the line?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I appreciate the conversation and being an active listener during this process. A lot has been said. One of the things I did want to say is when we originally started this conversation, it was in effect to actually change or find a way to change the TAC. Specifically the definitions, which was prompted by the launch of the distance education portal. With the distance education portal actually signifying 100% online, that's where all of this discussion originally got started. Then realizing that would be a very extensive process, we looked at redirecting the committee work to do something that could be taken to effect much sooner than the longer process of the TAC. Josh, I don't know if your committee has kind of changed that idea or if that's kind of long-term still what the goal is. Because of the change, then the PGP was introduced as an instrument to be able to give this change and put it in front of our institutions sooner rather than later. So the idea was that we would take something of this context and put it into the basic assumption section of the PGP, understanding the PGP is, as Patrick mentioned earlier, applicable to all different types of programs, making sure that instead of referencing specific things, we reference the overall TAC or the overall definitions. So if those change, we don't constantly have to be updating the PGP. And that's kind of that historical background context. There are multiple places that we already reference things like proctoring and so forth because we align with CRAC and with SAC. So that is in there, but I think the area that we were going to put this in was specifically under the basic assumptions, not being too prescriptive so we wouldn't hinder institutions.
This is Josh. I think that's a good summary of how it ended up being recommended to be placed into the revision of the PGP. I think the proposed language is. I think it's a good step towards bringing awareness at institutions of the importance of informing students without making the task so precise as to introduce to institutions a standard that would be difficult for institutions to comply with.
Hi, this is George with Lone Star. I just had something that came up earlier, and I wanted to ask a quick question. On here, I noticed in the text that was on there earlier, it mentioned in-person tests, and in here we used proctored exams. In this language, I think proctored exams would also include online proctoring. Do we need to make it actually say in-person tests similar to the other statement?
That clarification, this is Patrick, that clarification makes sense to me, because you're right. I mean, we would hope that in the program they would have an indication when they're registering for courses if they're going to be proctored exams at any point, but specifically the ones we're concerned about is when they have to travel to them, whether they travel to the institution or a testing site that is near them, which near them may be 30 minutes, an hour away, and they would need to, it would be helpful for them to know that. So I like that suggestion for including in person as it refers to proctored exams too.
This is Josh. So the recommendation, I guess, is to add after percentage of proctored, we could say percentage of proctored and in person. And I'm fine with that, but just wanted to clarify.
No, I don't think it was proctored and in person. It would be in-person proctored exams.
Okay.
Is that correct, George? Is that your intent as well?
Yes.
And this is Josh. That's that sounds fine to me.
I'm going to add it to the language on the screen. Oops.
Okay, so as I am on my phone and I cannot see what is on the screen, Andrew, would you mind reading the current language as proposed with the changes?
Absolutely. The current language reads, academic programs should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description of hybrid blended, fully online, and 100% online programs and courses for students, including the amount of face-to-face and online interactions, number or percentage of synchronous and asynchronous meetings, and number or percentage of in-person proctored exams that students should expect in the program or course.
I have a question about asynchronous meetings. What would fall into that category?
So this is George. When I was looking at the same kind of thing earlier, it would be everything that's not synchronous. So whatever percentage you said was synchronous, it'd be the opposite. So it'd be the 85% pretty much, anything in the online course. That's how I was reading it, at least.
Okay. I guess I was just trying to picture what an asynchronous meeting is, because a meeting implies synchronicity, whether it's a in-person synchronous meeting or whether it's like we're doing now on a phone conference, it's electronically mediated. It's still synchronous, and we all had to be here at the same time. An asynchronous meeting, I mean, maybe that describes a discussion board or reading on your own, or but it just seems odd to say asynchronous meetings when it really what we're trying to get at is the percentage of synchronous meetings, and then everything else is not synchronous, but it's not necessarily a meeting either. It's just interactions that, well, and maybe interactions is a better word than meetings in that instance, because you can interact asynchronously, but you don't really meet asynchronously.
Well, this is George again. I think it makes sense. It would be, the statement would work just as fine, I think, without asynchronous in there.
This is Josh, and Justin, I appreciate your point, and I think when we were putting the language together, we probably just kind of glossed over that, and I would agree with, I think that students, and the concern is, for someone who's going to take an online program or course, the concern would, you're not really concerned with the number, because everything you do in an online course, except for synchronous meetings, is an asynchronous activity, whether it's an assessment that students do on their own or discussion board or whatever. So I guess that's a long way of saying I would support what George has suggested in taking out and asynchronous meetings, or and asynchronous.
Gotcha.
This is Alicia Wyatt, and I do have a question about that, because when I read that, I thought it meant you could download the meeting after the fact, which means I could participate in the meeting, but I was doing it after the fact, but it didn't mean that I wasn't getting that content at all. I don't know if that's what you meant or not. That's just how I read it.
So I think that including, and this is Josh again, I think that we just didn't think through including and asynchronous. I think it sounded good when we included it. So, and again, if it's that you're viewing a meeting subsequently, I think that would fall in the same category as everything else that's in an online course, all the other content that's not done synchronously.
So if you like, I'd read the now revised language if you like it. Academic programs should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description of hybrid blended, fully online, and 100% online programs and courses for students, including the amount of face-to-face and online interactions, number or percentage of synchronous meetings, and number or percentage of in-person proctored exams that students should expect in the program or course.
Andrew, this is Michelle. Can I add just a couple of quick comments?
Go ahead.
One of the things is on this piece, I see what we're trying to do, and I think the spirit of the language originally was designed so that we could, in essence, have a general statement that says if you are requiring a student to come on campus or be somewhere at a time for attendance, that's what needs to be on there, which is a much more generalized context and actually spelling out everything that needs to be there. And that may be the route that we go, because if not, we can really get really granular when it comes to this. The other piece is, because this is a basic assumption within the PGP, does this item need to be approved as its own item, as we aren't really modifying any definitions or anything policy-wise that we're moving forward? This actually only becomes one line within the larger document, and the larger document will actually be brought to LTAC for formal approval.
I think what I'm hearing you saying is, does this have to be approved in the PGP? What I'm understanding is that we're just approving the way we want this language to look, and then we pass it on to the PGP, and how you incorporate it into that and bring it back to the LTAC, then we'd approve the PGP as a full document. Is that what you were asking?
Right, but because it's a line within, in other words, if this is a standalone statement, where would it be standing alone? If it's not referenced within the PGP, where would it be standing alone? I thought the entire intent of this statement was to be integrated into the PGP, because we weren't actually moving towards modifying TAC.
Right. So I think what I'm understanding is that we were just going to approve this one, pass it on to the PGP group, and the PGP would then determine where it was being put.
And so because it's going to be a statement that's integrated into the PGP, does that need a formal recommendation? Because the rest of the PGP does not have formal approval and recommendation for the statements within that certain area.
Procedurally, not at this point. We don't need to have a recommendation as far as where it goes in the PGP. Right now, we're basically just looking at whether or not we like the language to give to the PGP. To the PGP group, I should say. But we don't need a recommendation as where it's going in the PGP. Just do we like the language to give to the PGP group to determine where to put it.
Okay, and we do need to do that piece. I'm not really sure if we have to do that piece, if it's going to be integrated into the larger document. But this is a great discussion, so I'm really excited that we're having it, but trying to figure out process-wise.
Andrew, you checked, I believe the reason we're having this call is because you checked with appropriate individuals at the coordinating board, and so that's why we needed to have this meeting, the vote, and the approval of the language to move it forward.
Correct.
Remember that email? Yeah.
Right. What we needed, right. What we wanted to do is to approve this language to give to the PGP in order to incorporate it give to the PGP group to incorporate it into the PGPs, and then that was going to be distributed into the field, I guess, for feedback, when then when we come to the next meeting where we're going to bring the PGP back after feedback for final approval with the LTAC in February. If I'm not mistaken, that's what our plan was.
Okay, that's my understanding. So we aren't technically changing the definitions of hybrid, online, all of this. What we are doing is we are adding clarification language to the PGP, recommending that institutions, when they're certifying programs via the PGP, that they're made aware that they need to inform students of requirements that may be unique or whatever to the program itself. So this is just some additional clarification language or some instructions to include as part of the PGP document. So it will not be looked at as a standalone statement. It would be part of the overall PGP. And then as Patrick discussed, the hope would be that institutions take this statement and sometime and use it to craft maybe an institution-wide statement that is separate from the PGP, but that would be on the institution's back. Is that kind of where we're going?
This is Josh. I believe that that's all accurate.
That's correct.
As I understand it.
Yes.
So this statement itself would not be standalone. We're just approving it as a committee that we see the value and the need for this statement, and then it would be integrated through Francisco and Michelle in the PGP group, somewhere in the languages that make sense to help really truth in advertising and making sure students are aware of requirements.
This is Josh again. Yes, I think that's correct.
So we have language that has been submitted as a suggestion to be added to the PGP.
Yes.
This was Steve Levy. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Okay. So I have one, I'm sorry to say this, I have one other, I think it's going to be much, much easier to decide on, friendly amendment to the language. And that is the very first word, academic. At community colleges, this might be confused and think that it applies only to the courses that we're referring to in the text for academic courses and not workforce courses. So I would substitute the word instructional programs, which covers them all.
Steve, I think that's a good clarification, but I now question whether the word programs is the right description of who we're asking to make a reasonable effort, because when we say academic programs, are we talking about departmental personnel who offer programs, or are we talking about the collection of courses that amount in some credential, whatever that might be? So who are we asking to make this effort? Is it institutions?
That's what I was saying.
Departments? Because we're asking them to, academic programs should make a reasonable effort to provide a description of programs, right, if we leave out all the modifiers for what programs is. So it's kind of a strange thing that we're almost anthropomorphizing academic programs to make them agents, that they will carry out something. And I think we may mean departments responsible for academic programs or instructional programs.
Yeah, the only comment I had was just change the term academic to instructional, so it's not confusing, particularly to community colleges.
Correct. And I think if we stay with the word programs in there, that is a good alternative, is to replace academic with instructional. But I'm kind of making the case for maybe we're not talking about it's the programs that need to be reasonable in telling us about programs. It is some agent and whether that agent is an institution or whether it is the departments responsible for instructional programs, something that seems to put the responsibility on people or a group of people rather than on something that could be confused with just being a collection of curriculum.
This is George. I would be okay with replacing that with something like institution of higher ed.
This is Elizabeth. I would also agree with that because I think if you put it at the institutional level, then it is up to the institution to then trickle that down to the different academic programs. So I'd be okay with that change.
And this is Mary. I agree with both of you.
That being said, yes. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
This is Jacqueline. So would we then say institutions of higher education offering instructional programs should make a reasonable effort? Is that the spirit of the friendly amendment?
Or isn't, this is Steve again, or isn't that redundant? Institutions of higher education do offer instructional programs, not those who offer.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I don't think that adding who deliver changes the meaning in any way. So if we can leave it out, then leave it out.
So then it would be institutions of higher education should make a reasonable effort
Yes.
to provide an accurate description.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
And that aligns with the rest of the PGP language.
Alrighty. Our current language now, after revision, reads, institutions of higher education should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description of hybrid blended, fully online, and 100% online programs and courses for students, including the amount of face-to-face and online interactions, number or percentage of synchronous meetings, and number or percentage of in-person proctored exams that students should expect in the program or course.
Andrew, this is Patrick again. I'm wondering if we can't simplify that down a little bit to get to the root of what Michelle was suggesting. That what we're really most interested about finding is truth in advertising, that what is the amount of face-to-face or synchronous meetings. It could be period there, and we'd cover most everything I think we want to say. When we say including the amount of face-to-face and online interactions, well, and that doesn't; those don't necessarily add up to 100%. If you're looking at because they're not mutually exclusive. And online interactions, that could include some that are face-to-face in the sense that two-way video is face-to-face. So in-person might be a better word there, but face-to-face and synchronous, I think, does cover everything that we want. So I would propose language that said that we do this including the amount of face-to-face or synchronous meetings to include in-person proctored exams that students should expect in the program or course.
So let me say that just one more time. Including the amount of face-to-face
or synchronous meetings,
including,
to include, since we used including at the beginning of this
phrase, to
include the number of in-person proctored exams.
Okay, let me put that on there. Is that all right if I put that on there for the committee?
Yes, this is Elizabeth.
Okay.
And certainly you have an undo, so this is just
Number of percentage of synchronous face-to-face. Okay. All right. To include to include. Alrighty. So here's what we have right now. We have institutions of higher education should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description of hybrid blended, fully online, and 100% online programs and courses for students, including the amount of face-to-face or synchronous meetings, to include in-person proctored exams that students should expect in the program or course. And I should probably put a comma after exams.
And Andrew, I think that now going back and having you read the whole thing straight through, that students should expect in the program or course is almost redundant also, because we're saying that we're going to provide an accurate description to students. And so that accurate description is providing the expectations for the program or course. I don't feel strongly about that, but just in hearing it read completely through, it almost seemed a little awkward to have that at the end, that wasn't necessary. But again, I leave that up to the group to discuss.
So this is Josh. So Justin, so you're suggesting kind of taking off the preposition at the end in the program or course, correct?
Yeah, that subordinate phrase that starts with that students should expect.
So you're saying from
taking out. So you would take out that students should expect as well.
Yeah.
That's acceptable to me. This is, and this is Josh again.
Taking it out doesn't change the meaning in any way, and leaving it in doesn't particularly add any clarity to me.
This is George. I like the way that changes the language. I like this new version.
So I'm sorry, George, are you saying you like it with that part removed?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Elizabeth. I'm looking at where it says, including the amount of face-to-face or synchronous meetings, and then it says to include. To me, that just sounds a little bit redundant. I don't know if we want to change the verbiage so that include. I just feel like it's a little bit. It should flow better, I think. Somehow.
This is Linda. Why couldn't we just say including the amount of face-to-face or synchronous meeting? Face-to-face or synchronous meetings or in-person proctored exams, and leave the to include, because you're right, it doesn't flow well.
This is Josh, and and Linda, I was going to recommend almost the same thing. I think we could take out, in other words, it would say face-to-face or synchronous meetings, and then we could say either and or. in-person proctored exams, so that it said, including the amount of face-to-face or synchronous meetings and in-person proctored exams.
This is Mary. That seems to flow much better.
Okay.
This is Patrick. I agree.
Josh, I'm going to leave it up to you. You want and or?
I'm open to either one, whatever folks on the subcommittee and the larger LTAC think.
I would say and. This is Elizabeth.
I put and in there. With now the passage reading, institutions of higher education should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description of hybrid blended, fully online, and 100% online programs and courses for students, including the amount of face-to-face or synchronous meetings and in-person proctored exams. And we wanted to take off that last bit that students should expect. There we go.
This is Patrick, and I'm wearing down. I know I'm wearing you out also, but I wanted to ask about the preposition when we say who we're doing this for or who we're providing this to. So at the end of the clause, an accurate description of hybrid blended, fully online, and 100% online programs and courses for students or to students. It seems like we're providing something, it is to them. And that's in the spirit of notification.
I agree.
So I'd propose changing it from courses for students to courses to students.
This is Josh, and Patrick, that sounds like a more precise word.
Hey, this is Pam. I had to step away a minute. What did I miss?
We don't know how long you were gone.
That's a joke. I was kidding. I just was hoping to hear someone try to summarize.
No, we would tell you to look at the YouTube stream.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Here's what we have now then. Institutions of higher education should make a reasonable effort to provide an accurate description of hybrid blended, fully online, and 100% online programs and courses to students, including the amount of face-to-face or synchronous meetings and in-person proctored exams.
This is Steve Levy. I move we call the question for a vote.
I second that. This is Elizabeth.
So we have updated language. We have a motion to call the vote, and we have a second. I'm sorry, I didn't hear who the second was. I believe the motion was from Steve. Was the
Elizabeth.
second Elizabeth? Yes. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to endorse and approve this language, and then have it sent to the PGP committee for inclusion on the updated PGP document. Is that's correct? That's where we are. So any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we've had a motion, we've had a second, so I will ask for vote. Andrew, do we need to do it by roll call because we're on an audio call, or can we just do it as a aye and nay?
We can do it as aye and nay.
Okay. So all those in favor of the modified language that Andrew has read out that is on the screen, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed to the modified language as Andrew has read it, please signify by saying aye. All right. Hearing none. Any abstentions? Okay. So the modified language has been approved and endorsed by LTAC as a whole, and it would now be sent to the PGP committee for inclusion in the updated PGP document that will then go out for review and comment to the larger higher ed community in January, I believe is the plan. If Michelle is still on the phone, she can correct me if I'm wrong on the plan moving forward with PGP.
You're correct.
Okay. That's right. So that is correct. So with that, we have approved or endorsed the language, and that was the last item on our agenda. And so with that, unless there's any other business, I would like to wish each of you a happy holidays and hope you all get a much needed and much deserved break over your holiday break whenever that may start. And with that, we will entertain a motion to adjourn and adjourn the meeting.
So moved. This is Lydia Timmis.
Okay, the LTAC does stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank